Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about preliminary analytical procedures. So preliminary analytical procedures are another required step in the risk assessment process. And what exactly does this mean? So a preliminary analytical procedure seeks to basically achieve this goal where we look at an estimated account balance and compare that to what is actually recorded and see if that seems reasonable. So we have a step-by-step process here that allows us to achieve that. So the first thing we have to do is develop an expectation. So let's say that we are looking at our interest expense account. So interest expense is pretty easy to calculate. So we would take the outstanding loans that we have, the interest rate that we might have on those specific loans, multiply those out, and figure out what we would estimate that expense to be. We would then define a significant difference. So let's say we estimate that the interest expense account should be $500,000. And then we would define a significant difference. So let's say as long as it's not off by more than $25,000, we think that that's going to be okay. Then the third step is to compare that expectation with the recorded amount. So if we're estimating that it should be 500,000 and then we go and look at it and it's actually 505, well, because it's only off by 5,000 and that is within this significant difference that we had defined, we would say everything looks great. Step 4 would be to investigate significant differences. So if we said it should be 500,000, the significant difference was 25,000, and we look at the recorded amount and it's 550,000, then we are off by a significant amount, that additional 50,000 that's greater than what we thought it should be. And we would want to investigate that. Maybe they're paying on some loans that they don't have recorded. Maybe the interest rate changed and we didn't know about it. We would want to investigate why there is that particular difference. And then remember, if it's not documented, it's not done. So we would want to document all of the things that we did to perform that preliminary analytical procedure. So that's kind of the basics of what this preliminary analytical procedure is. But now I want to talk about why we do it and what really it is. So why we use preliminary analytical procedures, first of all, it's required by our auditing standards. So we looked at those 5 steps of the risk assessment process. One of them is to perform preliminary analytical procedures. So we do preliminary analytical procedures, first of all, because it's required. Analytical procedures can be performed at 3 different stages in the audit. So first in the planning stage, what we're talking about right now, but it can also be used as a form of evidence that we use in the actual gathering of evidence phase. And then finally, in the wrap-up stage, when we are at the conclusion of our audit and ready to issue our opinion, we can use analytical procedures at that point too. So analytical procedures are required at the planning phase in the beginning and the wrap-up phase in the end, and they are optional in the middle. And then next, we have, it provides an organized approach. So by following this analytical procedure approach, it gives us a good starting point to be able to look at those financial statements and really target areas that have higher levels of risk, target areas that seem out of whack. And that kind of leads us to this attention directing piece as well, because it's really going to assist auditors to identify potential problems. So it's going to help to drive us to areas where we have additional questions and might need to perform a little bit more work. So then the last thing I want to talk about is what is a preliminary analytical procedure. So we talked about this kind of overarching goal of having that expectation and then looking and seeing if what it actually is there falls into that expectation, but there are some other specific analysis that we can do as well. So the vertical analysis and the horizontal analysis. So if you think about, the horizon is side to side and vertical is up and down. that can help guide you on what these vertical and horizontal analysis things mean. So a vertical analysis, so vertical means up and down. So that means we're going to look at every account based on some other number. So this could be total sales, or it could be total assets. And we're going to look at how each number relates to that. So if our cash is 50% of our total assets, that would be an example of a vertical analysis. A horizontal analysis goes side to side. So side to side, we might have 1 year in one column and the next year in the next column, and we look at the growth over time. How has that changed from year to year?